The knife scraped against the china plate with that particular sound that makes your teeth ache. I watched my girlfriend Bridget cut her roast beef into perfect little squares, the same methodical way she approached everything in life. Everything except honesty, apparently. "Deacon, honey, pass the gravy," Mrs. Patricia Yates commanded from the head of her mahogany dining table. The woman had a voice that could cut glass and a stare that could freeze hell. She'd been giving me that stare for the better part of 2 years now, ever since Bridget and I started dating. I handed over the gravy boat, noting how the silver gleamed under the chandelier. Everything in the Yates household gleamed. Old money had a way of making even the simplest Sunday dinner feel like a museum exhibit. "So, Deacon," Mrs. Yates began, and I knew from her tone that whatever came next was going to hurt. "Bridget tells me you two have been together for quite some time now." 2 years, 3 months, and 16 days, I replied, taking a sip of wine. "But who's counting?" Bridget shot me a warning look. She hated when I got sarcastic around her family. Too bad. I was an accountant, not a diplomat. "Well then," Mrs. Yates continued, her fork poised mid-air like a weapon, "when exactly are you planning to make an honest woman of my daughter?" The question hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. Bridget's father, Harold, cleared his throat uncomfortably. Her younger brother, Tommy, suddenly found his mashed potatoes fascinating. Even the grandfather clock in the corner seemed to tick louder. "That's a really good question, Mrs. Yates," I said, setting down my wine glass with deliberate care. "I'm glad you asked." Bridget's face went pale. She knew that tone. That was my audit voice, the one I used when the numbers didn't add up and someone was about to get caught. "The thing is," I continued, reaching into my jacket pocket, "I've actually asked that question before. 3 times, to be exact." Mrs. Yates raised an eyebrow. "I beg your pardon?" I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table like evidence in a courtroom. "The first time was in Paris. Remember Paris, Bridget? The Eiffel Tower, the ring I'd saved 6 months to buy, the whole romantic speech I'd practiced?" Bridget's fork clattered to her plate. "Deacon, please don't." "The second time was Christmas morning, right here in this very room. I had the ring hidden in the tree, got down on one knee in front of your whole family. Very traditional." Harold leaned forward, confused. "But we never saw any—" "The third time," I interrupted, "was on her birthday last month. Dinner at Le Bernardin, champagne, the works. I even had the waiter bring the ring out with dessert." Mrs. Yates looked between Bridget and me like she was watching a tennis match. "I don't understand. If you proposed 3 times, then why—" "Because she said no every single time." I tapped my phone screen. "Would you like to hear the recordings?" The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear the ice maker cycling in the kitchen. Bridget's face had gone from pale to green. "Recordings?" Tommy whispered. "Oh, yes. See, I'm an accountant. I document everything, including conversations with my girlfriend about our future together." I scrolled through my phone. "Here's the one from Paris." I pressed play. Bridget's voice filled the dining room, tinny but clear through the phone speaker. "Deacon, I can't marry you right now. I'm not ready for that kind of commitment. I need to focus on my career, my master's degree. Maybe in a few years when I'm more established." I stopped the recording. Mrs. Yates stared at her daughter like she'd never seen her before. "But you told us he was afraid of commitment," Harold said slowly. "You said he kept making excuses." "Oh, it gets better," I said, finding the next file. "This is from our conversation after Christmas." Bridget's recorded voice again. "I said no, Deacon. I meant no. I'm only staying with you until I finish school anyway. Your apartment is convenient and you pay for everything. Don't make this harder than it has to be." Tommy's mouth fell open. Mrs. Yates set down her fork with shaking hands. "There's more," I continued. "This is my personal favorite, from last week when she thought I was in the shower." I played the final recording. This time it was Bridget on the phone with someone else. No, Mom, I'm not going to marry him. Are you crazy? He's a boring accountant who wears the same 3 ties to work. I'm just using him for the tuition money and free rent until I graduate. Then I'm out of there. The silence stretched so long, I started counting heartbeats. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mrs. Yates slowly turned to face her daughter. Bridget Elizabeth Yates, is this true? Bridget's mouth opened and closed like a fish. It's not. You don't understand the context. The context? Harold's voice rose an octave. The context of you lying to your entire family for 2 years? And using this poor man for money, Mrs. Yates added, her voice dripping with disgust. I stood up and straightened my tie. Well, this has been illuminating, but I should probably get going. Deacon, wait. Bridget reached for my arm. We can talk about this. Work it out. I looked down at her hand on my sleeve, then back at her face. Actually, we can't. See, I moved all my stuff out of the apartment this morning while you were at your yoga class. The lease was in my name, by the way. You have until the end of the month. Her face crumpled. You can't just leave me with nothing. I'm not leaving you with nothing, I replied, pulling a manila envelope from my jacket. I'm leaving you with this. I placed the envelope on the table in front of Mrs. Yates. That's an itemized list of every penny I've spent on Bridget in the past 2 years. Rent, groceries, tuition, books, that trip to Cabo, the designer purse for her birthday. It comes to $37,412. Mrs. Yates opened the envelope with trembling fingers. $37,000. I'm not asking for it back, I said. Consider it payment for 2 years of acting lessons. She's quite good. I walked toward the door, then paused and turned back. Oh, and Bridget? I canceled the credit card you've been using, the one you thought was yours but was actually a supplementary card on my account. Just thought you should know before you try to fill up your gas tank tomorrow. The last thing I heard as I closed the door was Mrs. Yates's voice, cold as winter wind. Bridget Elizabeth, you have exactly 5 minutes to explain yourself before I decide whether you're still welcome in this house. I walked to my car with lighter steps than I'd had in months. Sometimes the best revenge was just letting the truth speak for itself. My phone started buzzing before I even reached my car. Text after text, call after call. I let them all go to voicemail as I drove back to my hotel room. Yes, hotel room. I wasn't about to tell the Yates family that I'd been planning this exit strategy for 3 weeks. The Marriott downtown wasn't fancy, but it was clean and anonymous. Perfect for a man who'd just blown up his entire life in the span of 10 minutes. I poured myself a whiskey from the minibar and finally listened to my messages. Bridget crying, Deacon, please call me back. We need to talk. This is all a misunderstanding. Harold, confused. Son, I think there's been some kind of mix-up here. Call me when you get this. Mrs. Yates, furious. Mr. Miller, I owe you an apology, and my daughter owes you much more than that. The last message was from my best friend Nate Jennings. Dude, whatever you did, Bridget's been calling everyone we know trying to get your new address. She sounds completely unhinged. Call me. I called Nate back. He answered on the first ring. Jesus Christ, Deacon, what happened? Bridget showed up at my apartment an hour ago demanding to know where you were. She looked like she'd been hit by a truck. I gave him the condensed version while I loosened my tie. So basically, I played her own words back to her family and walked out. Holy shit. You recorded her? I'm an accountant, Nate. I document everything, especially when the numbers don't add up. And she really said all that stuff about using you? Every word. I've got hours of recordings. Want to hear the one where she talks about how boring I am in bed? Nate whistled low. Damn, man. That's cold, but also kind of brilliant. What's your next move? I stared out the hotel window at the city lights below. Honestly, I hadn't thought that far ahead. I just wanted out. Well, you might want to start thinking, because she's not going quietly. She called Jake and Miranda too, trying to get them to convince you to see reason. Whatever that means. Jake Morrison and Miranda Wells. Our couple friends, the ones we'd been double dating with for months. I felt my stomach tighten. What did they say? That's the thing. They want to meet with you tomorrow. Both of them. They said they need to hear your side of the story. Something in Nate's voice made me suspicious. But I got the feeling they'd already heard Bridget's version. And let's just say she's apparently a very convincing actress when she wants to be. I drained my whiskey. Set up the meeting. Somewhere public. I have a feeling I'm about to lose some friends. The next evening, I met Jake and Miranda at Brennan's Pub, a dimly lit place downtown where the music was loud enough to cover private conversations. They were already there when I arrived, huddled together in a corner booth like they were planning a military operation. Deacon. Miranda stood to hug me, but it was one of those stiff, obligatory hugs that felt more like a pat-down. Thanks for meeting us. Jake didn't get up. Sit down, man. We need to talk. I slid into the booth across from them and ordered a beer. The waitress, a redhead with tired eyes, brought it quickly and disappeared. Smart woman. She could probably sense the tension. So, I said, taking a sip. I assume Bridget called you? Miranda nodded, her face serious. She's devastated, Deacon. Absolutely devastated. She told us what happened at dinner, and honestly, we're a little shocked. At her behavior? Yeah, I was pretty shocked too. At your behavior, Jake corrected, his voice sharp. Recording private conversations? Humiliating her in front of her family? That's pretty low, even for you. I set down my beer carefully. Even for me? What's that supposed to mean? Miranda leaned forward. Look, we know you've been having problems lately. Bridget told us about your trust issues, how you've been paranoid and controlling. But this is taking it too far. Trust issues? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Did she also tell you that she's been using me for rent money and tuition while planning to dump me the second she graduates? She explained all that, Jake said dismissively. You took her words out of context. She was just venting, blowing off steam. Everyone says things they don't mean when they're frustrated. 3 separate recordings over 6 months. All saying the same thing. That's a lot of venting. Miranda's expression softened slightly. Deacon, I know you're hurt, but relationships are complicated. Just because she wasn't ready for marriage doesn't mean she doesn't care about you. She literally said she was using me. She said she was grateful for your support while she pursues her education, Jake corrected. There's a difference. I stared at them both, feeling like I was in an alternate universe. Did you actually listen to the recordings? She played us some of them, Miranda said. And honestly, they sounded like a woman who was scared of commitment trying to protect herself, not someone who was deliberately using you. She played you some of them? I pulled out my phone. Let me play you all of them. Jake held up his hand. We don't need to hear them again. The point is, you violated her privacy and trust. That's not okay, regardless of what she said. So let me get this straight, I said slowly. She lies to me for 2 years, lies to her family about me, uses my money for her education while planning to leave me. But I'm the bad guy for having proof? You're the bad guy for recording her without permission, Miranda said firmly. That's illegal in some states, you know. Good thing we're not in one of those states. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, but it was clear that nothing I said was going to change their minds. Bridget had gotten to them first, spun her story, played the victim, and they'd bought it completely. As we prepared to leave, Jake delivered the final blow. Look, Deacon, we've been friends for a long time, but we can't support this kind of behavior. If you want to work things out with Bridget and get some help for your trust issues, we're here for you. But if you're going to keep playing these vindictive games, we can't be part of it. Vindictive games? I stood up, throwing a 20 on the table. I told the truth. That's all I did. You humiliated someone you claimed to love, Miranda said quietly. That's not truth. That's revenge. I looked at them both for a long moment. These people I'd considered close friends for years. You're right about one thing. It was revenge. But sometimes revenge and justice are the same thing. I walked out of the pub and into the cool night air, my phone already buzzing with a text from Nate. How did it go? I typed back, about as well as the Titanic. I'll call you tomorrow. But as I walked back to my hotel, I realized something. I wasn't angry about losing Jake and Miranda. I was relieved, because now I knew exactly who my real friends were. And more importantly, I knew that Bridget's campaign to paint me as the villain was just getting started. 3 days later, I was back at work, trying to lose myself in spreadsheets and tax returns. Numbers didn't lie, didn't manipulate, didn't record secret conversations about how boring you were. Numbers were honest, which was more than I could say for most people lately. My boss, Arnold Arnie Frobisher, knocked on my office door around 10 a.m. Arnie was a 60-something ex-IRS agent who'd seen every kind of financial shenanigan imaginable. He had the permanently skeptical expression of a man who'd audited too many crooked politicians. "Miller, you got a minute?" I looked up from my computer. "Sure, what's up?" He closed the door behind him and sat down across from my desk. "I heard through the grapevine that you had some personal drama over the weekend." I raised an eyebrow. The grapevine being? "My wife plays bridge with Patricia Yates every Thursday. Apparently, your little dinner theater performance is the talk of the country club." I leaned back in my chair. And Patricia wanted me to tell you that you're welcome at their house any time. She also wanted me to give you this." He handed me a check. "It's from her personal account. Says it's partial reimbursement for what her daughter put you through." I looked at the check. $5,000. "I can't take this. That's what I told her you'd say. She said to tell you it's not charity, it's justice. Her words, not mine." I stared at the check for a moment, then folded it and put it in my wallet. "I'll send her a thank you note." "There's something else," Arnie said, his expression growing serious. "I got a call this morning from someone claiming to be your girlfriend. Said you'd been having some kind of mental breakdown and that I should keep an eye on you at work." My pressure spiked. She called my boss? Ex-girlfriend, I assume. And yes, she did. Wanted to know if you'd been acting erratically, missing work, showing signs of instability. Real concerned citizen, that one. "What did you tell her?" Arnie's grin was sharp as a razor blade. "I told her that your work performance has been exemplary, that you're one of my most reliable employees, and that she should probably focus on her own problems instead of making up stories about other people's mental health." "Thanks, Arnie. Don't thank me yet. Because here's the thing. If she's willing to call your boss and spread lies, she's probably not going to stop there. You might want to get ahead of this." He was right. I spent my lunch break making phone calls. First to my bank, to make sure Bridget couldn't access any of my accounts. Then to my landlord at the old apartment, confirming that the lease termination was final. Then to my credit card companies, making sure all her supplementary cards were permanently canceled. But the most important call was to my lawyer, David Chen. We'd gone to college together, and he specialized in family law. "Deacon, good to hear from you. What can I do for you?" I explained the situation, including Bridget's call to my boss. David listened without interrupting, occasionally making humming noises that could have meant anything. "Okay," he said when I finished. "First question. Are you planning to sue her for the money she took?" "No. I just want her out of my life." "Good, because that would be messy and expensive." Second question. Do you have any shared assets, joint accounts, co-signed loans, anything like that?" "Nothing. I was always careful about that." "Smart man." Third question. Are you worried she might escalate this? File false charges, claim harassment, anything like that? I thought about her call to Arnie. "Yeah, I'm worried." "Then here's what we're going to do. I'm going to draft a cease and desist letter. Very formal, very legal. telling her to stop contacting you, your employer, your friends, and your family. If she violates it, we can get a restraining order. Will that actually stop her? Probably not. But it creates a paper trail. And if she keeps escalating, we'll have documentation of a pattern of harassment. That evening, I met Nate at his apartment. He lived in a converted warehouse downtown, all exposed brick and industrial lighting. Very bachelor chic. He was waiting with Chinese takeout and beer. "So," he said, handing me a container of lo mein, "I have news, both good and bad." "Give me the bad first." "Bridget's been busy. She called my sister, asking for your parents' phone number. She also tried to friend request your cousin Lisa on Facebook." I nearly choked on my noodles. "She's going after my family now?" "Gets worse. She showed up at Jake and Miranda's place last night, crying, begging them to help her save your relationship because you're having a breakdown and she's afraid you might hurt yourself." Jesus Christ. "But here's the good news," Nate continued. "I may have found you an ally." "What kind of ally?" He pulled out his phone and showed me a Facebook profile. Sandy Weller, 29, worked as a paralegal downtown. Attractive, blonde, with the kind of smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Who is she?" "Lance Weller's ex-wife." I looked up from the phone. "Lance Weller?" "The guy Bridget's been texting. You know, Lance one from her phone?" Turns out he's a real piece of work. Divorced Sandy last year, left her with nothing while he kept the house and the car dealership. Sound familiar? It did sound familiar. Very familiar. "How do you know all this?" "Because Sandy reached out to me. Apparently word gets around in this town and she heard about your little Sunday dinner revelation. She wants to meet." I stared at the photo. "Why?" "Because Lance is apparently seeing someone new, someone who matches Bridget's description perfectly, and Sandy thinks we might be able to help each other." "Help each other how?" Nate's grin was pure mischief. "Why don't you ask her yourself? She's waiting in my kitchen." Before I could object, a woman appeared in the doorway. Sandy Weller in person was even more striking than her photos, but there was something hard around her eyes, something that spoke of recent betrayals and hard-won wisdom. "Deacon Miller," she said, extending her hand. "I've heard a lot about you. All bad, I assume." "On the contrary, I've heard you're a man who appreciates the truth. That's refreshing in this town." She sat down at Nate's kitchen table and folded her hands. "So, let me ask you something. How much do you know about Lance Weller?" "Just that he's apparently texting my ex-girlfriend." "Well, let me fill in some gaps. Lance owns Weller Luxury Cars downtown. Inherited it from his father, along with a trust fund that he burned through in about 5 years. The dealership is mortgaged to the hilt, and he's been using company funds for personal expenses. I know because I used to do his books." "Used to?" "Until I discovered he was cooking them. That's actually what led to our divorce. I threatened to report him to the IRS unless he gave me a fair settlement. He chose option 3. He fired me, divorced me, and made sure I couldn't find work anywhere in town." I was beginning to see where this was going. "And now he's dating Bridget. Now he's dating someone who looks exactly like your Bridget, drives a car exactly like your Bridget's car, and has been seen around town spending money like she just won the lottery. Money that, according to you, she doesn't have." Nate leaned forward. "Sandy thinks Lance is running some kind of scam, using Bridget to help him move money around, maybe set up fake accounts or co-sign loans. Which means," Sandy continued, "that your ex-girlfriend might be in more trouble than she realizes, and if we can prove it—" She didn't need to finish the sentence. I could see the possibilities spreading out like a chess game. Bridget thought she was playing me, but she might have walked into an even bigger trap. "What exactly are you proposing?" Sandy's smile was sharp as a blade. "I'm proposing we find out exactly what Lance and Bridget are up to, and then we make sure they both get exactly what they deserve." I looked at Nate, who was grinning like Christmas morning, then back at Sandy, who was watching me with the intensity of a hawk. I'm listening, I said, and for the first time since Sunday dinner, I felt like I might be getting ahead of the game instead of just reacting to it. The next morning, Sandy met me at a coffee shop downtown, armed with a laptop and a manila folder thick enough to choke a horse. She'd done her homework. Okay, she said, spreading papers across our corner table. Here's what I've found so far. The first document was a credit report. This is Lance's credit history from last month. See these new accounts? 3 credit cards, a personal loan, and a car lease, all opened in the past 6 weeks. That's around the time Bridget started acting strange, I realized. Exactly. And look at this. She showed me a bank statement. This is from Lance's business account. See these deposits? They're not from car sales. They're cash deposits, always just under $10,000. I knew enough about financial regulations to understand the significance. He's structuring, keeping deposits below the federal reporting threshold. Right. And guess who's been making these deposits? She pulled out a series of bank security photos, grainy black and white images from ATM cameras. In every single one, Bridget was clearly visible. How did you get these? I still have friends at the bank. Turns out being Lance's ex-wife has some advantages when it comes to getting information about his accounts. I studied the photos. So, Bridget's helping him launder money? That's what it looks like. But here's where it gets interesting. Sandy pulled up something on her laptop. I've been tracking their social media. Look at this. She showed me Bridget's Instagram account. Over the past month, there had been a dramatic change in her posts. Instead of the usual teacher stuff, classroom decorations, student artwork, educational memes, her feed was now full of expensive restaurants, designer clothes, and luxury car photos. She's not even trying to hide it, I muttered. Gets better. Look at the geotags. Sandy clicked through the photos. Expensive hotel in Portland, 5-star restaurant in Boston, shopping trip to New York. Your ex-girlfriend has been living like a millionaire. On whose money? That's what we need to find out, but I have a theory. She pulled out another document. This is a loan application from First National Bank. Someone applied for a $50,000 personal loan last week using your employment information as a reference. My information? Name, social security number, employer, salary, everything. The application was denied because they called your office to verify employment and your boss told them you'd never applied for any loan. Bridget tried to take out a loan using my identity? Bridget or Lance, maybe both. The application was submitted online, so there's no way to know who actually filled it out, but whoever it was had access to very detailed information about your finances. I thought about all the times Bridget had been in my apartment, had access to my computer, my mail, my tax returns. She could have easily gathered everything needed for identity theft. There's more, Sandy continued. I've been watching Lance's dealership. He's been moving cars off the lot after hours, but there's no record of sales. I think he's using the vehicles as collateral for loans, then hiding them before the banks can repossess them. That's fraud. Multiple kinds of fraud. Bank fraud, tax evasion, identity theft. If we can prove it, Lance could be looking at serious federal charges. And Bridget? Depends how deep she's in. If she's just a naive girlfriend who got manipulated, she might get off with probation. But if she's an active participant, Sandy shrugged. Conspiracy charges, accessory charges, she could do real time. I stared at the evidence spread across the table. A week ago, my biggest problem was a cheating girlfriend. Now I was looking at what might be a major criminal conspiracy. What do you want to do with this information? I asked. That depends. How badly do you want to see them both get what's coming to them? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet me at the park on Elm Street in an hour. Come alone. B. I showed the message to Sandy. Her expression darkened. Don't go. Why not? Because people who are desperate enough to commit federal crimes are desperate enough to do other stupid things. And if they think you're getting too close to the truth, She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. I was beginning to realize that I might have stumbled into something much more dangerous than a simple cheating scandal. But I was also realizing that I was tired of being reactive. For 2 years, I'd let Bridget control the narrative, control the relationship, control me. For the past week, I'd been responding to her moves instead of making my own. I'm going to meet her, I decided. Deacon, that's not smart. Maybe not, but I'm tired of playing defense. It's time to go on offense. Sandy studied my face for a moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, but you're not going alone. An hour later, I was sitting on a bench in Riverside Park, watching joggers and dog walkers enjoy the afternoon sun. Sandy was positioned about 50 yards away, pretending to read a book but actually recording everything on her phone. Bridget arrived 10 minutes late, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she was wearing jeans and a t-shirt instead of her usual carefully coordinated outfits. "Thank you for coming," she said, sitting down next to me. "What do you want, Bridget?" "I want to fix this. Fix us." She turned to face me, and I could see tears in her eyes. "Deacon, I know I hurt you. I know I said terrible things. But we can work through this." "Can we work through the identity theft too?" Her face went white. "What?" "The loan application. Using my personal information to try to get $50,000. We can work through that?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't." I pulled out my phone and showed her the bank photos Sandy had given me. "What about these? Can we work through you depositing cash for your boyfriend Lance?" Bridget stared at the photos like they were written in a foreign language. Where did you get these?" "I'm an accountant, Bridget. I know how to follow money trails. The question is, do you know what kind of trouble you're in?" She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. It wasn't supposed to go this far. What wasn't? Any of it. Lance said he just needed help moving some money around, business stuff. He said it was all legal, just complicated because of his divorce. "And you believed him?" "I wanted to believe him." She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "He made me feel special, Deacon. Important. Like I mattered." "So you helped him commit federal crimes?" "I didn't know they were crimes. I thought I was just helping with his business. He said his ex-wife had frozen his accounts out of spite, and he needed someone to help him access his own money." I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "Bridget, you deposited over $200,000 in cash over the past month. Did you really think that was legal?" Her face crumpled. "What am I going to do?" "You're going to turn yourself in. Cooperate with the authorities. Maybe you can work out a deal." "I can't go to prison, Deacon, I can't." "You should have thought of that before you started laundering money." She grabbed my arm. "Please, help me. I know I don't deserve it, but please, I'll do anything." I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back at her face. For just a moment, I remembered why I'd fallen for her in the first place. She could be charming when she wanted to be, vulnerable in a way that made you want to protect her. But then I remembered the recordings, the lies, the manipulation, the identity theft. "I can't help you, Bridget. You made your choices." I stood up to leave, but she wasn't done. "If you turn me in, I'll tell everyone you were involved too. I'll say you knew about everything, that you helped plan it. Who do you think they'll believe?" And there it was. The real Bridget. The one who'd been hiding behind the tears and the vulnerable act. The one who'd manipulate anyone to get what she wanted. "Go ahead," I said. "Tell them whatever you want. But you might want to consider that I have recordings of every conversation we've had in the past 2 years, including the ones where you admit to using me." Her face hardened. "You're going to regret this, Deacon." "Maybe, but not as much as you're going to regret trusting Lance Weller." I walked away, leaving her sitting alone on the bench. As I passed Sandy's position, she fell into step beside me. "Did you get all that?" I asked. Every word, including the part where she threatened to frame you. Good, because I think it's time to end this. Sandy smiled. I was hoping you'd say that, because I've got one more surprise for you. What kind of surprise? The kind that's going to put both of them away for a very long time. Sandy's surprise turned out to be a flash drive containing 3 years' worth of financial records from Lance's dealership. She'd copied them before he fired her, and they painted a picture of systematic fraud going back long before Bridget entered the picture. He's been running this scam for years, she explained as we sat in her paralegal office that evening. Using girlfriends to help move money, then discarding them when they got too close to the truth or started asking questions. How many girlfriends? At least 4 that I can identify. All young, all financially naive, all left holding the bag when things went south. She pulled up a series of police reports on her computer. 2 of them were actually charged with crimes. One did 6 months in county jail. And Lance? Lance was always just the innocent businessman who got taken advantage of by his criminal girlfriend. Very sad, very convincing. I stared at the reports. So Bridget's just the latest victim. Except this time we have evidence. Real evidence. Bank records, security footage, recorded conversations. Enough to prove that Lance is the mastermind and Bridget is just a pawn. Why are you helping me with this? Sandy was quiet for a moment, staring out the window at the city lights. Because I spent 2 years married to Lance Weller. 2 years of being told I was crazy, paranoid, imagining things. 2 years of watching him charm everyone else while he systematically destroyed my life. When he was done with me, I had no money, no job, no reputation, and no one believed my side of the story. She turned back to me. I don't want that to happen to anyone else. Even someone who hurt you the way Bridget hurt you. So what's the plan? Tomorrow morning, we take everything to the FBI. Financial crimes, identity theft, money laundering, this is all federal jurisdiction. They'll open an investigation, probably have arrests within a week. And then Lance Weller finally gets what he deserves, and maybe Bridget learns that actions have consequences. But as it turned out, we didn't have to wait until morning. At 11:30 p.m., my phone rang. Bridget's number. Deacon, please, you have to help me. Her voice was panicked, breathless. What's wrong? It's Lance. He knows you've been investigating him. He knows about the bank records, the photos, everything. How does he know that? I told him. Her voice broke. I'm sorry, I was scared. I didn't know what else to do. But now he's saying, I know too much. A chill ran down my spine. Where are you? I'm at the dealership. He brought me here to talk, but I think he's planning to do something to me. Get out of there, now. I can't. He has my keys, my purse, everything. Deacon, I'm scared. Really scared. I was already reaching for my jacket. I'm calling the police. No. He said if I call the police, he'll make sure I go down for everything. He has evidence that makes it look like I was the mastermind. Please, just come get me. I'll tell you everything, give you everything you need to put him away. Just please don't leave me here. Against every instinct I had, against Sandy's advice, against common sense, I found myself in my car, driving toward Weller luxury cars. Maybe it was because I heard real terror in Bridget's voice. Maybe it was because I knew what Lance was capable of. Or maybe it was because, despite everything, I couldn't just let someone get hurt. The dealership was on the outskirts of town, a sprawling lot full of expensive cars surrounded by a high fence. The main building was dark except for a light in the back office. I parked across the street and called Sandy. This is a bad idea, she said immediately. I know, but I can't just leave her there. Then call the police. She's right about one thing. If Lance has been setting her up, the police might arrest her too. I need to get her out first, then we can figure out the rest. Deacon, listen to me. Lance Weller is a sociopath. He's destroyed every woman he's ever been with. If he thinks you're a threat to him, he won't hesitate to hurt you too. I'll be careful. Famous last words. But I was already getting out of my car, already walking across the street toward the dealership. The front gate was open, which should have been my first warning sign. The second warning sign should have been the fact that I could see two figures moving around in the back office, not just one. I made it halfway across the lot before the lights came on. Floodlights, illuminating the entire area like a football stadium. I was completely exposed. Deacon Miller. Lance Weller's voice came from a speaker system somewhere. Right on time. I could see him now, standing in the office window. He was bigger than I'd expected, with the kind of build that came from high school football and regular gym sessions. Next to him, Bridget looked small and frightened. Let her go, Lance. Your problem is with me. Actually, my problem is with both of you. See, Bridget here has been telling me some very interesting stories about recordings and evidence and federal investigations. Very concerning stories. The FBI already has copies of everything. Hurting us won't change that. Lance laughed. The FBI? Is that what you think this is about? Federal crimes and justice and all that? He pressed a button, and his voice switched from the speaker system to shouting across the lot. This is about respect, Miller. This is about people knowing their place. And your place is not investigating me or my business. What do you want? I want you to walk away. Forget whatever you think you know. Forget whatever evidence you think you have, and walk away. Do that, and nobody gets hurt. And if I don't? Well, let's just say that sometimes people have accidents. Car accidents, usually. Very sad when young couples pass in car accidents. The threat was clear, and it crystallized something in my mind. This wasn't about justice anymore, or revenge, or even truth. This was about survival. Okay, I called back, you win, I'll walk away. Smart man, but first, I need some insurance. Come inside. We need to have a conversation about how this is going to work. Every instinct I had screamed at me not to go into that building. But Bridget was in there, and despite everything she'd done to me, I couldn't just leave her with a man who was clearly capable of violence. I walked toward the office, my phone in my hand, hoping Sandy was still on the line and recording everything. The office door opened before I reached it. Lance stood there, smiling like we were old friends meeting for drinks. Up close, he was even more intimidating, 6'3", probably 220, with the kind of confident posture that came from never having been seriously challenged. Deacon, good to finally meet you. I've heard so much about you. Behind him, Bridget sat in a chair, her hands zip-tied behind her back. Her eyes were wide with fear, but she was unharmed. Let her go, I said. All in good time. First, we need to discuss the terms of your silence. I already said I'd walk away. Yes, but I need more than your word. I need guarantees. He gestured to a computer on the desk. I need you to delete every file, every recording, every piece of evidence you've gathered. And I need you to call off your ex-wife. He added, glancing at something behind me. I turned around to find Sandy standing in the doorway, holding a gun. Hello, Lance, she said calmly. Miss me? The next few seconds happened very fast. Lance dove for a desk drawer. I tackled Bridget's chair, knocking her out of the line of fire. Sandy's gun went off twice, the sound deafening in the small office. When the shooting stopped, Lance was on the floor, clutching his shoulder and screaming. Sandy stood over him, the gun trained on his chest. You okay? She asked me. I was cutting the zip ties off Bridget's wrists with a letter opener from the desk. Yeah, you? Better than I've been in months. Bridget was sobbing, but she was unharmed. Is he gone? Unfortunately, no, Sandy replied. But he's going to live long enough to stand trial. In the distance, I could hear sirens. You called the police? The moment you hung up on me. They should be here any minute. Lance was still conscious, still cursing, still bleeding on his expensive office carpet. You can't prove anything, he gasped. It's your word against mine. Sandy smiled and held up her phone. Actually, it's your word against a recording of you threatening to eliminate 2 people, plus 3 years of financial records, plus testimony from 4 previous victims, plus the evidence Deacon gathered. You set this up, Lance realized. All of it. We gave you enough rope to hang yourself, I corrected. You chose to use it. The police arrived 5 minutes later, followed by paramedics and FBI agents. It took 3 hours to give statements, but by morning, Lance was under arrest for attempted kidnapping, assault with a weapon, financial fraud, money laundering, and a dozen other charges. Bridget was also arrested, but Sandy had been right. With her cooperation and testimony against Lance, she was able to plead to a single count of conspiracy. She got 2 years probation and community service. As for me, I got my life back. 6 months later, I was sitting in my new apartment, reading the newspaper coverage of Lance's sentencing. 25 years in federal prison. The judge had called him a predator who systematically destroyed the lives of vulnerable women for financial gain. Sandy had gotten a job with the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. Bridget had moved back in with her parents and was working as a substitute teacher while completing her community service. And I had learned something important. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting the truth speak for itself.